The auction and the Rusty Ship hall was full of noise. People shouted, raised their hands, and waved bidding cards in the air. The auctioneer stood on a tall stage, his voice loud and fast as he pointed to the shiny ships behind him. Sold for 2,000 credits. Next, the auctioneer called, and another spaceship rolled forward. This one sparkled like a jewel, its chrome wings shining under the bright lights. Everyone leaned forward. Ready to bid. Tom stood quietly at the back of the room. He didn't belong there. His shirt was plain and his shoes had holes. He didn't have enough money for even a single part of those shiny ships, but he liked watching. He liked to dream. As the next bid went higher and higher, Tom smiled to himself. He didn't care. These ships weren't for him. The auction went on for over an hour. Ship after ship was sold. Fast, powerful, perfect machines. Finally, the auctioneer wiped his forehead and clapped his hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice slowing down, "we have one last ship tonight." A pair of robots rolled out the final ship. The crowd went quiet, but not because they were impressed. This ship was ugly. Its body was covered in rust and dents. One wing sagged to the side, and the engines coughed out a faint trail of black smoke. The glass of the cockpit was cracked, and dirty. Someone in the crowd laughed. "Is that even safe to touch?" Another man called out, "Does it even fly?" Tom couldn't help but smile at the poor ship. It looked like him, old, unwanted, and forgotten. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Starting bid, 50 credits." Nobody moved. The auctioneer tried again. 50 credits? Anyone? Silence. 30 credits? Still nothing. People began to gather their things and leave. Tom looked at the ship. Something about it pulled at him. Maybe it was the way it stood there, quiet and patient, even though nobody wanted it. Maybe it was the way it seemed lonely. Before he could stop himself, he raised his hand. 10 credits, he said. Heads turned. People stared at him like he was crazy. The auctioneer blinked in surprise. 10 credits? Tom nodded. "Yeah, 10. The auctioneer shrugged. "Sold." To the young man in the back. There was scattered laughter in the room. Some people shook their heads. Others whispered jokes to each other as they left. Tom ignored them. He walked up to the stage and placed his 10 credits on the table. The auctioneer gave him a small key, thin, old, and a little bent. "Good luck," the auctioneer muttered. The ship waited outside the hall, sitting in a dim corner of the docking yard. It looked even worse up close. The paint was chipped, the door hung slightly open, and there were strange scratches all over the metal. Tom put his hand on the cold surface. "Well," he said softly, "you're mine now." That's when it happened. He felt something, a faint warmth under his fingers. Then he heard it. A whisper. At first, he thought it was the wind, but the voice was too close. It was soft, like someone was speaking into his ear. At last, the voice said, "My chosen one." Tom jumped back. "What the—" He looked around, but the docking yard was empty. Nobody was there. He pressed his hand to the ship again. Silence. Then, faintly, "You came for me." His heart pounded. This was impossible. Tom shook his head. "Okay," he said out loud, trying to sound calm. "I must be tired." Yeah, just tired. But deep down, he knew he wasn't imagining it. The ship was alive. Somehow. He climbed inside, and the door creaked shut behind him. The inside smelled like dust and metal. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. He sat in the pilot's seat and ran his fingers over the controls. They lit up under his touch, one by one, as if they recognized him. "That's weird," he murmured. Then the whisper came again. Louder this time. "You are mine now, and I am yours." Tom froze. His mouth felt dry. Who? Who's there? The voice laughed softly. It was warm and strange. Not scary, but not human either. You don't know me yet, it said. But you will. We have much to do. The stars are waiting. The controls lit up brighter, and a soft hum filled the cabin. Tom sat there, staring at the lights, his hand still resting on the panel. He didn't know what he had just bought, but one thing was certain. It wasn't just a rusty ship. Something inside it was awake, and it had chosen him. Asterisk, the awakeningdom, didn't sleep that night. He sat inside the ship long after the auction hall closed and the lights of the docking yard went out. Outside, the night was quiet and cold. Inside the ship, it was warm, and the strange symbols on the walls gave off a soft blue glow. He couldn't stop staring at them. At first, he thought the symbols were just paint or scratches. But as he looked closer, they seemed to move, twisting and shifting very slowly, like they were alive. He ran his fingers over them. They were warm to the touch, and when he touched them, he felt something, a memory that wasn't his. He saw flashes in his mind, a vast black sky full of stars, burning cities on strange planets, giant creatures with wings of light. He pulled his hand away, gasping. The images stopped, but the feeling stayed. This was no ordinary ship. Suddenly, the door behind him slammed shut on its own. The lights inside the ship grew brighter, and the faint hum became a steady, low vibration under his feet. "Hey!" he shouted, trying to open the door. "Don't do that." The voice answered. "You are safe," it said. Tom froze. The voice was soft, but it filled the room completely. It was clear now, not just a whisper, and it came from everywhere at once. He turned in a circle, looking for a speaker, but there was nothing. Just the glowing walls and the controls. "Safe?" he asked. "Safe from what?" The voice chuckled, a low, strange sound, almost like a purr. "From everything else," it said. Tom didn't like the sound of that. "What are you?" "Who are you?" The lights in front of him flared bright, and the air shimmered. Then, right in front of him, a figure appeared. She was tall, almost touching the ceiling. Her body was made of light, shifting and glowing like the surface of water. She looked human, but her eyes were silver, and her hair floated around her head like smoke. She smiled. "I am your queen," she said. Tom backed up until his legs hit the pilot's seat. "Queen? Of what?" "Of the stars," she replied simply. "Of all you see above you, and much you do not." Tom swallowed hard. "Okay, but why are you here? Why are you in this ship? And why me?" The queen tilted her head slightly, as if surprised by the question. "Because you touched me," she said. "You woke me, and because you belong to me." Tom's heart hammered in his chest. "Belong? I'm not some pet. I just bought a ship." "You bought me," she corrected, her silver eyes narrowing. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, and the controls began to move on there. Own, levers sliding and buttons clicking. Tom shook his head. No. I didn't sign up for this. I'm just a guy. I'm nobody." The queen's smile widened. "You were nobody," she said. "But now you are mine, and you are chosen." Suddenly, the ship shook violently, and a loud clang came from above. Tom stumbled and grabbed the seat to keep from falling. "What's happening?" he yelled. The queen's expression turned serious. "They have already found us," she said softly. "Too soon, but no matter, we must leave." "Who? Who's coming?" The queen raised a glowing hand, and the entire ship lit up. The rusty metal seemed to peel away like dead skin, revealing sleek, black panels beneath. The cracked glass of the cockpit melted and reshaped itself into a perfect, clear shield. The ship no longer looked old or broken. It gleamed with strange power. Tom's mouth fell open. Outside, red lights flashed across the dark sky. Several small ships were approaching fast, their engines screaming. Enemies, the Queen said calmly. Hunters. They want what you now have. They will kill you to take it. Tom's knees felt weak. Oh, great, just great. The Queen leaned closer, her silver eyes locking on his. Sit, she ordered. He sat. The seat molded itself around him like it was alive, and straps wrapped over his shoulders. The controls lit up completely, and his hands seemed to fit perfectly on them. The Queen stood behind him, her hand resting on his shoulder. Listen to me, she said, her voice low, but commanding. You are mine, and this is our ship. It will obey you as it obeys me, but you must trust it. Trust me, or you will die before sunrise. Tom swallowed and nodded. Okay. But I've never flown anything before. The Queen's lips curved into a fierce smile. Then you will learn very fast. The ship's engines roared to life, louder and deeper than anything Tom had ever heard. The rusty walls outside split open, and the ship shot upward so fast his stomach nearly flipped. The hunters fired at them, but beams of blue light shot from the ship's wings, cutting the enemy blasts out of the sky. What is happening? Tom shouted over the roar. The Queen leaned close to his ear and whispered, You are awakening. And so am I. The ship streaked through the clouds and into the stars, leaving the world below behind. Tom gripped the controls, breathing hard. He didn't know where they were going or why, but for the first time in his life, he felt something strange and terrifying. Power. And he couldn't help but wonder, if he was nobody yesterday, who was he now? The clanged stars stretched out in every direction, endless and cold. Tom stared through the glass dome of the cockpit, his knuckles white as he gripped the controls. The ship soared between constellations faster than his eyes could follow. Behind him, the Queen stood tall and still. Her light shimmered faintly now, but her silver eyes never left him. Where are we going? Tom finally asked, his voice small against the hum of the ship. To my throne, she replied. Her words sent a chill down his spine. He swallowed hard. Look, Queen, or whatever you are, I'm just a guy. I fix engines. I sweep floors at the station. I don't belong out here. This isn't my fight. Her gaze softened, but she shook her head. You don't understand yet, she said. You think you chose the ship, but it chose you. I chose you. Tom shook his head, laughing weakly. You're wrong. I don't want to be chosen. Take me back, right now. For the first time, the Queen frowned. The walls of the ship seemed to darken slightly, and the glowing symbols around him flickered. Back? She repeated quietly. Then she stepped closer, so close he could feel her warmth. Even though she was made of light. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You cannot go back. Not anymore. Tom looked up at her, his chest tightening. Why not? She placed her hand on the control panel. The glowing symbols flared brighter, because outside the glass, shapes began to appear. At first, he thought they were just stars. But they moved, shadows of massive ships, drifting silently alongside them. One by one, they lit up with red lights, surrounding them from every side. What are they? Tom whispered. Witnesses, the Queen said softly. Suddenly, a voice, cold and sharp, filled the cockpit. It wasn't the Queen. Return the vessel. Claim it, the voice demanded. You are unworthy. Release the Queen. Tom jumped. Who said that? On the glass, a figure appeared. Black armor, faceless, with glowing red eyes. That, the Queen murmured, is the Council of Hunters. They come for me every time I awaken. They believe no human is worthy. The figure raised a hand. We will. rip you from her if you resist. You have one chance to surrender." Tom's mouth went dry. He looked at the Queen. "What do I do?" Her silver eyes gleamed with something between pride and fury. "You claim me," she said. "Claim you?" She nodded slowly. "Say the words." "I claim the Queen of Stars." Tom stared at her like she was crazy. "Are you serious? This isn't a game. Look at them. They're going to kill us." Her light flared suddenly, blinding and hot. The ship shuddered. "Say it?" The hunters outside began to close in. The black ships lit up, charging weapons. Now! Tom's throat was dry. His hands shook. He could barely think, but something inside him stirred. Something strange, something strong. He opened his mouth. "I claim the Queen of Stars." The moment the words left his lips, everything changed. The ship exploded with light, not outward, but inward, folding and reshaping itself around them. Tom felt heat rush through his veins like liquid fire. The symbols on the walls burned brighter and sank into his skin, like tattoos made of light. He cried out, not in pain, but in something he couldn't describe. Outside, the hunters' weapons fired, but the blasts hit an invisible wall around the ship and dissolved into sparks. The Queen stepped closer, her light now blazing like a star. She pressed her hand to his chest, and he felt her energy pour into him, a connection so deep. It felt like his very soul was being rewritten. "You are mine," she said, her voice like thunder and wind. "And you," Tom gasped, his body trembling under the power, "are mine." The hunters outside froze. For the first time, the black ships backed away. The faceless figure raised its head as if surprised. "Impossible," it hissed. The Queen smiled, a dangerous, triumphant smile. "He has claimed me," she announced, her voice echoing beyond the glass. "You have no power here." The hunters hesitated. Then, one by one, their red lights dimmed, and they began to retreat into the stars. Fading into darkness, the ship grew quiet again. The air was warm and electric, and Tom slumped back in the seat, his heart still racing. The Queen studied him. Silently, her silver eyes soft now. "You have done it," she whispered. "You are truly mine." Tom laughed weakly, still catching his breath. "Great, but what does that mean? What happens now?" The Queen tilted her head, and for the first time, she almost looked amused. "Now," she said, "you learn what it means to rule." Before he could answer, the ship suddenly lurched forward, faster than before, and the stars around them blurred into long streaks of light. Ahead, far away, something glowed on the horizon, a giant golden palace floating in the void, surrounded by rings of fire and light. Tom stared at it, feeling both awe and fear at the same time. "What is that?" he whispered. "Home," the Queen replied simply. The ship carried them forward, into the unknown, and Tom couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The first battle. Golden Palace grew larger and larger. Ahead of them, it floated in the black of space, surrounded by glowing rings of fire and thousands of small lights that moved like fireflies. Tom stared at it through the glass dome of the ship, his hands tight on the controls. He felt smaller than ever. "What is that place?" he asked softly. Behind him, the Queen stood taller and brighter than before. Her light filled the cabin like sunlight. "That," she said, her voice calm but sharp, "is my throne. And soon it will be yours too." Tom's stomach twisted. "Mine? No. I don't want to sit on any throne." The Queen leaned closer to him, her eyes like molten silver. "You already do," she whispered. As they approached, Tom began to see more clearly. The palace wasn't quiet or peaceful. Huge ships circled it, black and sharp like blades. And between the glowing rings of fire, he could see smaller crafts weaving in and out, fast and erratic. He frowned. Are those guards? The queen didn't answer. Her gaze stayed locked on the palace. Her jaw tightened. A faint sound came through the walls, distant but growing louder. It was a deep, hollow drumbeat. And screams. Tom felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. What is that? War, the queen said before Tom could ask anything else. A blast of light shot past the ship, so close it made the glass shake. He jerked the controls to the side and narrowly avoided another one. Outside, dozens of black fighters were swooping toward them. Their red eyes glowed in the darkness, and their weapons burned like fire. They're shooting at us. Tom shouted. Why are they shooting at us? I thought we won already. The queen's light flared. She raised a hand, and the air in the cabin grew hot. You claimed me, she said, but they still think they can take me back. Now they will learn. The hunters closed in, their ships forming a dark cloud around them. Beams of red energy streaked toward Tom's ship. Do something. He cried. You do it, she replied coolly. What? She placed her glowing hand over his on the controls. Trust the ship. It knows you now. You only have to want it. Tom swallowed hard. I don't even know what to want. But he didn't have time to think. Another blast grazed the side of the ship, and sparks showered the floor. He gritted his teeth, shut his eyes, and slammed both hands on the controls. The ship responded. Instantly, the walls glowed white-hot, and the engine screamed like a beast waking up. Then it moved, faster than Tom thought was possible. One moment they were surrounded. The next, they were inside the swarm of enemy ships. Tom gasped as the ship flipped and spun, firing blue beams of light that cut through the hunters like paper. Yes, the queen whispered behind him, her voice full of pride. That's it. Feel it. The ship weaved through the battlefield like it was alive. The controls became warm under his hands, almost like they were part of him. He didn't even think anymore. He just moved, and the ship moved with him. Enemy craft darted in close and fired, but Tom's ship rolled sharply and shot it out of the sky. Then another, and another. He didn't know where the skill came from, but it was there. He felt powerful for the first time in his life. He wasn't nobody but the hunters weren't done. Ahead, the biggest ship yet loomed, a massive black cruiser with burning red engines and claws like a giant insect. It opened its jaws and fired a huge beam of energy straight at them. Tom's eyes went wide. We can't dodge that. You don't need to, the queen murmured. She stepped forward, her light pouring into the walls of the ship. The symbols on the glass began to glow gold instead of blue. Hold the line, she commanded. Tom clenched the controls and shouted. The ship stopped moving. Instead, it unfolded, panels on its sides splitting open to reveal hidden wings and weapons. A brilliant gold shield expanded around them just as the enemy beam hit. The two forces collided, and the air shook like thunder. Tom screamed as the controls burned under his fingers, but the shield held. Then, with a sharp crack, the enemy's beam broke apart. The black cruiser faltered, and the queen's ship fired back, a single spear of white light that pierced through the cruiser's heart. The massive ship exploded silently, breaking into pieces that scattered across the stars. The remaining hunters fled. One by one, their red lights vanished into the black. The battlefield grew quiet again. Tom slumped forward, breathing hard, his hands still shaking. The queen placed her hand gently on his shoulder. You fought well, she said, softly. He laughed weakly, though it sounded more like a sob. I thought I was going to die. You were, she replied with a faint smile. But you didn't, because you are mine, and I protect what is mine. He looked up at her, his heart still pounding. "What now?" he asked. She turned, her gaze toward the glowing palace ahead. "Now," she said, her voice colder than before, "we take back the throne." Tom swallowed hard. He didn't know what waited for them inside that golden palace. But if the battle he just survived was only the beginning, he wondered if he was ready for what came next. And somewhere deep inside, he heard a whisper. The same one from the day he bought the ship. "You are chosen. Now you will become more." The ship began moving again, gliding toward the throne of stars, and Tom could no longer tell if he was afraid or excited. Asterisk. The betrayal's golden palace loomed ahead, brighter and closer than ever. Its rings of fire spun slowly around it, and thousands of tiny lights danced like stars trapped in its gravity. But as the ship drew nearer, Tom felt something wrong. The Queen stood behind him, silent, her silver eyes fixed on the glowing palace. Her light was dimmer now, not weak, but cold. Tom gripped the controls tighter. "You're awfully quiet," he said over his shoulder. "Everything okay?" She didn't answer at first. "This place," she murmured finally, "is full of ghosts." Tom frowned. "What does that mean?" She didn't explain. Instead, she raised her hand, and the ship slid gracefully into a long corridor of fire and glass, heading toward the palace gates. The gates opened slowly, two huge slabs of gold and stone, etched with symbols like the ones on the ship's walls. Beyond them was a vast docking bay, where dozens of strange ships floated, motionless and silent. As the Queen's ship landed, Tom noticed something odd. The ships here looked abandoned. Their wings were folded, their lights were dark. Their metal bodies were covered in dust. "Are these your people's ships?" he asked carefully. "They were," the Queen replied. "Were?" She said nothing. The ship touched down, and the glass dome opened. Warm, dry air rushed in, carrying the smell of smoke and stone. Tom followed the Queen out of the ship. The ground beneath his feet was smooth and black, like polished obsidian. Huge statues of the Queen, or something that looked like her, lined the walls, their silver eyes glaring down at him. He couldn't help but feel like they were watching. Queen led him through a towering archway and into the heart of the palace. The air inside was heavy. The halls stretched on forever, lit by faint blue flames that floated in the air like spirits. He stayed close to her. Even though she terrified him sometimes, she was the only thing that felt real here. Finally, they entered a vast throne room. At the far end stood a golden throne on a raised platform, and sitting on it was someone else. Tom froze. The figure was tall, draped in black armor that shimmered like oil. Its face was hidden behind a silver mask, but its eyes burned red. The Queen stopped, her body stiff. "You," she said, her voice sharp. The figure stood. "Yes," it replied. Its voice was deep and smooth, but full of something dark. "Me." Tom swallowed hard. "Ah, who's that?" The figure laughed softly. "She hasn't told you, has she? How typical." The Queen's light flared. "You will not speak to him." Tom glanced nervously between them. "Can someone please tell me what's going on?" The figure stepped closer. "You really don't." "No," it said. "She hasn't told you what she is, or what you are now tied to." "He is mine," the Queen snapped, her light blazing brighter. The figure ignored her. Its red eyes locked on Tom. "Do you know how many before you she's claimed?" it asked. Tom blinked. "What?" The figure gestured at the statues lining the room. "All of them. Every one of those poor souls thought they were special. Chosen. Destined." The Queen hissed. "Enough," but the figure didn't stop. "And where are they now?" Dust and echoes. "Her mates do not rule. They burn, one by one, sacrificed to keep her throne alive. Tom felt his stomach drop. He shook his head. That's not true. She saved me. She protected me. The figure tilted its head. Did she? Or did she simply make sure no one else could have you? Lie, the queen growled, her voice shaking the walls. You are nothing but a traitor. A survivor, the figure corrected. The first of her chosen who escaped before she could consume me. Tom backed away, his heart pounding. He looked at the queen, her silver eyes fierce and bright, but now he wondered if that brightness hid something darker. Is that true? He asked quietly. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer to him, her hand reaching out. Her fingers glowed faintly, and he felt heat rising in his chest again. But now, the warmth felt heavier, sharper. You belong to me, she said firmly. Don't let him poison you. Tom looked at the figure, who watched silently. You can leave, it said softly. You can walk away before she drains you like all the others. Or you can stay and become her next shadow. The queen's light flared dangerously. If you leave me, she warned, you will die before you ever see your home again. Tom stood frozen between them, the queen's light pulling at him, the figure's red eyes steady and unblinking. His hands shook. His mind raced on, he thought, of the whispers in his head, the ship's strange power, the way she'd claimed him without asking God. He also thought of the way she'd saved him, how she'd fought for him, how she'd looked at him like he was more than just nobody. Choose, the figure said simply, before she chooses for you. The queen's fingers brushed his cheek. You are mine, she said softly now, almost pleading, but in her eyes. He finally saw something he hadn't noticed before. Fear, and that scared him more than anything else. The room grew silent as he took a deep breath. He didn't know what he was going to say, but he knew that whatever choice he made next would change him forever. Asterisk. The truth silence in the throne room was heavy. Tom stood between them, the queen glowing like a star, and the masked figure standing tall in black armor. Both waited for his choice. He felt like his chest was splitting open. The queen's voice came soft and low, almost a whisper now. You are mine. Remember what we have survived together. The figure spoke just as softly, but colder. You are alive because of yourself, not her. Don't let her chain you like the others. Tom closed his eyes. Images flashed in his mind, the ship lighting up under his hands, the hunters burning away, the whispers of power in his veins, but also the statues in the hall. They're empty. Eyes, the warning in the figure's voice. He opened his eyes, and for the first time, he said, I want the truth. Not your version, not his. The truth. The queen's light dimmed slightly. Her silver eyes narrowed. You wouldn't understand. Then help me, Tom said, his voice stronger than before. Show me. If you want me to choose you, show me who you really are. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then her hand lowered. Very well, she said quietly. The walls of the throne room began to glow, and the black stone beneath his feet turned to glass. Look, she whispered. And Tom saw. The glass lit up with images, not just pictures, but memories so vivid, he almost felt them himself. He saw her, the queen, long ago, not as light, but as flesh and blood, standing at the head of a vast army under a red sky. He saw her fighting. Creatures that clawed the stars apart, her silver blade cutting through the void. He saw worlds falling to dust beneath her feet, and her people, countless beings of light, kneeling to her. But then, he saw the betrayal, her council, her closest warriors, standing behind her as she sat on her throne, and then striking. chains of black energy wrapping around her, pulling her down as the council claimed her throne for themselves. Why? Tom whispered. Her voice came, heavy and bitter. Because they feared me. Feared what I had become. They called it mercy. Sealing me away in a ship, trapping me in my own body. Waiting for me to fade. The images shifted. He saw the council binding her to the ship and sending it drifting into space. He saw her waking again and again, centuries apart each time, finding someone who touched her ship, each time claiming them, each time trying to return to her throne, and each time failing. He saw the chosen before him, the ones the figure had spoken of. He watched them burn out, one by one, as her enemies hunted them down and destroyed them. The images faded, and Tom stood in the dark, shaking. He turned to her. You used them, he said. She met his eyes. I needed them, she corrected, and they needed me. But they were not enough. You are different. The masked figure stepped closer, his voice cutting through the air. That's what she tells everyone, he said. I was once where you are now, boy, full of fire, full of her lies. You betrayed me, the queen growled, her light flaring. I survived you, the figure replied. He pulled off his mask. Tom gasped. Beneath it was a man, pale, scarred, his silver eyes dim and broken. You think she gives you power, he said, his voice bitter. But really, she takes it, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of you but another ghost in her hall. Tom stared at the queen. Is that true? She didn't flinch. Yes, she said finally, because power always has a cost. And the stars do not forgive weakness. He stepped back, his mind reeling. You could have told me. You would not have stayed, she said simply. And for the first time, Tom saw her as she really was, not just a queen, not just a prisoner, but a creature of war, ruthless, desperate, lonely. The figure touched his arm. Come with me, he said. I can help you break the bond before it's too late. But the queen raised her hand, her light blazing gold. Choose, she commanded. Choose now. Leave me and be hunted forever, or stay and become more than you ever dreamed. Tom felt the weight of her power pressing on him, but also the faint pain of her pulling at his very soul. He looked at the scarred man. He looked at her. And he asked the one question neither had answered yet. What happens if I stay? The queen's silver eyes glowed brighter. You stop being who you were, she said softly, and you become who you were meant to be. He stood in the center of the throne room, the air hot and heavy with light and shadow. Behind him, the scarred man waited, his eyes full of warning. Before him, the queen stood like a star, her hand outstretched, and he realized the truth. He wasn't afraid anymore. Not of her, not of himself, but of what he might choose to become. The silence stretched, and the flames in the room seemed to lean toward him, waiting. His hand trembled, but slowly. He reached forward. The final showdown. His fingers hovered above her outstretched hand. The queen's silver eyes locked onto his. Behind him, the scarred man hissed through his teeth. If you take her hand, boy, you'll never be yourself again. Tom didn't look back. His chest rose and fell as the heat of the throne room pressed down on him. He felt the whispers in his veins, the light and the darkness pulling at him, fighting for his choice. You already aren't yourself, the queen murmured, her voice soft but sharp. You already are mine. Tom stared into her burning light and let his hand close over hers. The moment he did, everything exploded. A roar of energy shook the palace. The glass beneath his feet cracked. The statues along the walls shattered into dust. Golden flames swept through the room, spinning into a giant storm that swallowed them both. Tom screamed. But it wasn't pain anymore. It was something else. His blood felt like fire, his bones like steel. He felt himself growing, taller, heavier, stronger, until the room itself seemed too small to contain him not. And then he opened his eyes, and he saw. The queen was no longer just light. She stood before him in her true form, not a woman, but a towering creature of silver and gold, her body covered in shining armor that seemed alive, her wings stretching wide, enough to block out the stars. "Welcome," she said, her voice deeper now, echoing inside his skull. "To what you were always meant to be." Tom looked down at his own hands and gasped. They glowed faintly, carved with the same symbols from the ship. Power ran through him like a river. He felt infinite dot behind them. The scarred man staggered backward, his face pale. "You've doomed yourself," he spat. "You've doomed you us all." But before Tom could speak, the ground shook violently. The air split apart as a black hole of energy tore open at the center of the room, and through it stepped him, the true enemy. He was nothing like the hunters Tom had fought before. This creature was vast, a shadow made of blades and smoke, with glowing red eyes that burned brighter than suns. Its body shifted constantly, as if it was too large for reality to hold. Its voice cracked through the air like thunder. "You dare awaken the throne?" The queen spread her wings and raised her arms. "It ends here," she called. "You belong to me, Queen of Stars," the creature growled. "And the boy, he is nothing." Tom felt rage rise in him. He stepped forward, his glowing hands curling into fists. "Wrong," he shouted. "I'm everything you're afraid of." The creature's laugh shook the walls. "Then prove it." The final battle began. The creature lunged, its shadowy claws slamming into the floor where Tom stood. But Tom moved faster, almost flying, his feet barely touching the ground. The queen rose into the air, her wings blazing with golden fire as she unleashed beams of light into the creature's chest. But the creature struck back, throwing walls of darkness at them, swallowing parts of the palace whole. Tom and the queen fought side by side, their movements synchronized, their powers blending together. Light and shadow collided again and again, sending shockwaves through the stars. The scarred man watched from the edge, shielding himself from the blasts. "You'll burn," he called, "just like the others before you." Tom didn't care anymore. He felt alive. He felt unstoppable, and he saw now what the queen really was. Not just a ruler, not just a weapon, but a survivor. And she saw what he really was, not just a boy, not just a pawn, but a warrior. As the creature rose higher, gathering all its energy into one final attack, the queen turned to Tom. "Together," she said. He nodded. "Together." She placed her hand on his chest, and he felt her power pour into him, hotter and heavier than ever before. The golden symbols on his skin blazed so bright they hurt to look at. "You are the throne now," she whispered. Tom closed his eyes and let all of it out at once. A wave of white fire and golden light erupted from him, so bright it tore through the creature's shadow, ripping it apart piece by piece. Its scream echoed across the stars as it disintegrated into nothing. The black hole shrank and disappeared. The palace fell silent. And then it was over. The queen stood before him, her wings folding back, her silver eyes softer now. She bowed her head. "You have done what none before you could," she said quietly. "You have claimed not just me, but everything." Tom looked at his glowing hands, then back at her. The power inside him was still there, but it no longer scared him. He smiled faintly. "What now?" The queen smiled too, for the first time, almost gently. "Now we build." Behind him, the scarred man finally spoke. "You know you can never go home," he said bitterly. Tom didn't look back. He stepped toward the throne and sat down. The golden fire around it flared, and the palace lit up, alive again after centuries of darkness. I know, Tom said simply. He rested, his hands on the arms of the throne, feeling its warmth, its weight. He looked out at the stars beyond the broken gates. But why go home, he murmured, when the whole galaxy is mine? The queen stood at his side, silent and proud. The whispers in the air grew louder, no longer just hers, but his too. And the stars themselves seemed to bow. Tom exhaled slowly, his eyes blazing gold now. He was no longer nobody. He was the throne. He was chosen, and his story was only beginning.